Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome. This is your friend and your host, Karan Detani, and this is Who Was Drema. First of all, I would like to thank you all for coming here with your beautiful presence, and I would like to thank Jim Beck for organizing such a great webinar. I would like to thank Dr. Bill Barrett and all the people who knew Dreamer. And now I would like to start this webinar with a beautiful presentation of a slideshow that Jim and I made to honor Dreamer and her legacy. And there we go.
Welcome, everybody, for being here. This is a wonderful event. I am blown away by what I see and the beautiful faces that I see on my screen right now. I wish I could see all three at once because I'm so thrilled. And so thank you with all my heart for being here and taking this opportunity to remember a wonderful Sue Odom, Drema Odom, Drema Odom Blitz. How many names do we have? We missed the maiden name, but I won't go back for it. And the friends of Drema, particularly Dr. Bill Pettit, Susie Sikora, Karen Miller-Williams, Christine Heath, Rita Schufert. I'm not sure, there are a few others that may be here that I hadn't noticed. And if I've missed you, I will I apologize now and try to go through the list surreptitiously at some point and see if there's anybody that I missed. I would love to call on these people to speak and share just because they were there right back in those days. And then also later on, a few of the modern people sharing it, entering the fray, entering, the solution that we all understand is the three principles and strategies ways to share in a non-threatening way to help the nurses, a non-judgmental way to help the nurses and all of the others. Of course, everything that we go to, it doesn't only apply to these people, they apply to humanity in general. And, you know, at the very beginning on the slide, there was the quote from Second Chance to humanity in hopes that it might alleviate some of the unnecessary suffering that's going on. And that's the basis of all of the sharing of 3P. And it's certainly the basis of where we're going now. These helping professions are the ones that Sid turned to, using common sense, knowing, actually having seen it in his experience, that the ones who had the calling to share were the obvious ones to pass it on to as quickly as possible, because they were working with suffering people. So that's a spirit that we're looking for today. And I want to shift now to thanking to the gratitude towards Bill Pettit for lending his name to this project and for coming here and sharing his wisdom. And as I mentioned earlier, Drema worked in Bill's office with two other people as therapists, and for 3 years. So he has had some, you know, a wonderful knowledge of Drema, and whatever Dr. Bell is going to share with us today will be pertinent and valuable for all to hear. So, Bill, thank you for being here, and I want to turn it over to you now, and we will listen. Bon voyage. Take care.
I'm deeply grateful to you, Jim. This at first may seem tangential, but yesterday I was reading the 4th lesson from Kathy Marshall Emerson and Krista Kemsel's My Guide Inside. To my grandchildren in Minnesota, 2 9-year-olds that are twin girls and 2 7-year-olds that are twin boys. And it was it's the 4th lesson that some of you may know. When I introduced the 4th lesson for 1st graders, I tell people that after it was 40 years ago, 6 days ago, that I met George Pransky, and within 2 months later met Sid Banks, or 3 months, on April Fool's Day, very fittingly, 1983, 40 years ago. I'm sure that wasn't by accident. When I introduced the 4th lesson for 1st graders from My Guide Inside, you know, there's 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12. I always tell people that even though I'm in my 40th and 41st year, if you will, of exploring these principles, that the 4th lesson for 1st graders, on my good days, I get a B-. I think I've gotten a B a couple of times. But on most days, I get anywhere from a C- to a D+ on the 4th lesson for 1st graders in My Guide Inside. People often wonder then, if they're not familiar with My Guide Inside, what the hell is the 4th lesson for 1st graders that Dr. Bill Pettit is getting a C+ or a D, or a C- or a D on most days. And the 4th lesson is, in the first 3 lessons, we've learned that you have a guide inside. Everyone has a guide inside. Number 2 is that your thoughts create your feelings. All your thoughts, all your feelings come from your thinking. And your third one is your happiness. We learned last week that happiness is inside of you. And now in the fourth week, we're going to get to learn that you can realize that you're thinking fast and furious. And you can catch yourself and get present as best as you can. And before you know it, you will experience being calm and curious. Thanks to you, Jim. I actually, from your link, which Messenger, I don't even know what the hell Messenger is, but with your help, I downloaded Drema's book to my Audible. And then because I'm still going way to, you can choose your own adjective before fast, I had not listened to a Drema's book that she actually narrates. And I reached out to somebody that I thought I had enough time that I could have listened to more, but I reached out to somebody that I just felt right to do, and I only realized I only had 15 minutes. But I listened, well, I guess I had a little more. I listened to the first 18 minutes of Drema's book, narrated by her. I hadn't heard her voice in over 30 years. It was a beautiful experience to hear her voice again, because I could see her smile that you got a glimpse of on those pictures, which was so beautiful, and her laugh. God, did she laugh? When she laughed, your heart couldn't stay closed if it tried to. And I noticed my notes from those first 18 minutes. She covered all of those first 4 lessons that I spoke of, and more, in the first 18 minutes of that book, with such clarity. And I'm not talking about intellectual clarity. I'm just talking about, I love that statement, that Hebrew saying, words spoken from the heart reach the heart. Of all the people that I've met in my life, in my 80 years of living, 80 plus now, I can't think of anyone right off the bat. That I might think of people that were close to or equal to, but I don't know of anybody that I ever met that spoke more from her heart than Drema Suodu. Just in her everyday life. Anyway, what I'd like to do is maybe say just a few more words about nursing and nurses from a physician standpoint. And then I would, frankly, before I tell my stories, I'd love to hear, if they were willing to, from Karen Williams and Susie, those people that were there at the beginning, when I just got to the point where Drema Sue was describing that she came on to that surgical intensive care unit that had been plagued by conflict and one-upsmanship and a number of other things that I remember her talking about, and that she was amazed after being off for a month vacation, and her job is infection control, that something had occurred that had changed the feeling on that unit, and that people that were working there were enjoying their work, even though they were having people dying in their arms each day and throwing up and bleeding, and yet they were leaving not emptied and drained, that they talked about. They were filled up by the privilege that they have of being with people as they were passing through the veil of this life to the next. Wow. And she talks about, just before I had to leave, and I look forward now, and Jim, I am incredibly grateful to you. I'm just so grateful to be part of this, because I look forward to the next 50 minutes or so that I have of that book. I can't imagine that she has anything more to say, given what she packed in the first 18 minutes, but I know that she will. And she talks about how she grabbed it might have been one of Susie or Karen, I don't know, I'm anxious to hear. She grabbed one of them and said, "Can we have coffee? Can we, when you get a break, can we?" Because she said, I had to hear what the hell had happened on this unit. So I'd love to hear that. I have a couple of Drema stories that I'd love to share, but I'd love to wait and hear from people that were there at the beginning. But I want to switch for a couple of minutes here to just nursing and nurses. I mean, what I'm saying is the obvious. It's not the doctors that run the healthcare machine. It's the nurses. They're the ones that are there all day. You know, there's an old joke that I saw somewhere where the doctor's at his office, and he, after spending his, 8 minutes, 10 minutes with each patient, and then going back to his office, and he gets called by the nurse the third time for an order, that she needs to care for the patient. He says, "This is the third time you've bothered me. If you do this again, I'm just going to come up there and take care of that patient myself." And the nurse is going, "Yeah, I'd love to see that." Since we're here on 12-hour shifts doing that, and you're here for 20 minutes. And when I graduated medical school, there were a few, maybe they were much brighter than I, because most were much brighter than I, but they didn't have the common sense that when they transferred from medical school to being on the intensive care unit or in the emergency room, or even in the orthopedic clinic, it didn't matter where, that nurse that had been there 18 years knew about 4,783 times more than they did. And some didn't have the humility to do that. But I was saying last night, we had a gathering of 3 principals people. We had 15 people at our house, and including Debbie, who's on the call. And I said, if I lose my billfold, I don't know whether I'm going to get it back again. I lost it recently, but I got it back. But every single time I lose my humility, I have no fear that I'm going to get it back, because I get it back in spades. And those doctors that didn't know that the nurses, and not because the nurses were cruel to them, maybe some of them thought that, the sooner he learns this lesson, but never at the expense of the patient's safety or care. But a smart young doctor learns very quickly that the nurse is the vital piece in the healthcare profession. And I just want to say that, because I have an incredible nurses have saved my ass through my 40 years more. Doctor, did you really mean to write what you wrote on this order, even though it's 480 times the current dose? No, I didn't. Must have been thinking something else. Thank you so very much. So anyway, that's just my side thing to nurses. And Drema Sue was yeah. Anyway, so I would love to turn it over, if it's okay, Jim, to
By all
either
means.
one of those people that were there with Drema Sue at the beginning, if that's okay. And I do have a couple of Drema Sue stories that I'd love to share, because anyway. So I'll turn it over to you, back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Bill. That was just wonderful. Looking at my screen, I see Karen and Susie right beside each other. Karen is the closest to me, so I'm going to ask Karen if she would like to share.
Hi, thanks for having me here too. I just want to say that nurses, if you think about it, have been a huge part of 3P. Sid Banks was married, his first wife was a nurse, his daughter was a nurse.
Mm.
Bill,
Mm.
your first wife was a nurse.
Yes, she was.
George Pransky's wife was a nurse.
Well, interesting.
I thought there was one other one I was thinking of too.
Clyde T. Mills.
Oh, Roger Mills, Clyde
Clyde
T.
T. Mills is a nurse practitioner, psychiatric nurse
Yeah.
practitioner. Yes.
And we were fondly called the nurses back then, but I felt in some way that Sid was hoping for psychologist. He wanted that to be what came. And yet I think he was super grateful, because nurses are the ones who are most into it, as far as knowing how, I mean, to me, when I first started learning this, it just made sense. For a lot of people, they had different experiences. And when Bill, you talked about who did Drema talk to that day when she came in and said, what's going on here? I don't know who it was. I don't know if it was me. I was going to ask Susie or whoever, who is it? Was it me? I don't even know. But I do know that was the term she uses about thinking against yourself was huge. We knew right away, oh my God, why am I doing that to myself? And it just started dropping. And when Sue talks about it, we were backstabbing, griping, complaining, and we didn't even think we were stressed out. We were really thinking that was normal. And this is coming from someone who I thought of myself as a happy-go-lucky person most of my life, but even I was shocked to realize, oh my gosh, how much different life can be. And when they started working with us, they called it communication workshops. And even after one session, I remember thinking, that person needs it more than I do. And as much as I wanted to go, and I didn't even know what the heck they were talking about, I said, you need to take this position here. I'll stay out here and work on the unit. Because as soon as we started getting aware, the whole place just really did explode into this incredibly beautiful teamwork. And Drema talked in her, or maybe it wasn't Drema, it was, I think it was where she said we were just in peals of laughter. I mean, we really were. We were laughing way too much. The VA hospital thought of us as being weird. Something is wrong with these people. And I just have to say that similarly, when we worked at Hawaii Counseling, we even had clients after a group session accuse us of putting something into their tea because they felt so good. Like, people don't know why sometimes they're changing. So it's a fascinating thing. And Drema, by the way, just so you know too, her family used to call her Shelby. I knew her as Sue. She was Sue when we knew her. And we knew her name was Drema Sue. Her dad called her that, or named her that. And she became Drema when she moved to Hawaii.
Interesting.
And it was interesting even thinking back, because Sue was a dear friend, not just someone that I knew from the three principals. So she had a young boy, James, and other people had young kids. And so I was an auntie to many of the kids. I was there with Drema when she went through all of the stuff with the teenage turmoil, her son reuniting with his dad when she was homeschooling him at times when he had trouble. So I was there and got to be a part of watching this woman walk through very interesting times with a teenager, and totally with grace and love. And I mean, come on, picture this. She gave him, this was for Christmas. It was ornaments that they're plastic, but they're like stained glass looking, and you put them in the oven. She put it, I mean, J.A. did it. He put it in the oven. When we got home to their house, Susie, do you remember this? I don't know. Every single inch, there was not an inch of the house that was not covered in soot. We're talking from ceiling down the walls, on every bit of dishes that were in the cupboards. I mean, seriously, it was like, I can't even believe this. And Drema was just like, everything was just like, no problem, we'll just take care of this. It was, we all started seeing ourselves walking through those kind of experiences. And in the ICU, I mean, seriously, you can't explain how people that we worked with. I remember one guy, actually, he was on a spinal cord injury unit, and I went up to visit him during my lunch hour because it was more fun to go visit him during my lunch hour than it was for me to have lunch without someone like that. He was a gentleman who had been basically paralyzed in a criminal activity. He was shot and he was in prison for many years. And because of his medical condition, he ended up being released. And he had no legs. He basically had very little of a torso. And when I visited him at lunchtime, he would tell me stuff, Karen, I wouldn't want my legs back for what I know now, because he had learned how to be happy. And I saw this with my research patients when we'd go and work with them, similar to Drema's stories of these, you know, their ENT surgical cases that were just really hard things to deal with. And Susie Sikora and I both worked in the research, and I think Drema came in and worked with the research after I left and went to Hawaii. But there was this, or maybe I was working at Children's Hospital, I can't remember. But anyway, it was amazing to watch how we could be seeing things changing, and we didn't even know how much that we were. When Drema talks about the fact that we were laughing in the ICU, seriously, we were doing the dancing. We were pretending that they were smoking. We'd give them straws with little red on the end so they could pretend they were smoking. I mean, we had patients that were intubated and just laughing their heads off, even though they couldn't laugh out loud. You know, watching a bunch of nurses being playful in a place that is not meant for that. It really was an amazing thing. And I think overall, there's just no way to explain how this has helped in all of our nursing careers, no matter where we've gone with it. Susie Cora and I came back from Hawaii on our first trip to Hawaii. It was a vacation. We had both worked or got back around midnight or something on our planes. I mean, it was ridiculous. We had to get to work almost as soon as we landed. So we were quite tired, and we were getting, actually, we didn't arrive at midnight. We had to go to work at, I think, midnight, because we were getting a gentleman ready for open heart surgery. And what they do is they bring him into the ICU the night before so that you can put in all the lines, the arterial line, the CBP, the catheter. You get them all ready for what they need. And then they know where the bed is. They know what it looks like. They have an idea about when they wake up what this might look like. So Susie and I are just back from Hawaii. We're sharing aloha like you've never seen it. We're talking about the wiki buses, and we're laughing and talking to him. The next day I came back, and I don't remember if you knew this too, Susie, but I was, honestly, I couldn't even believe this had happened. He had died on the table. And I couldn't believe it. And for a moment, I had to think, wait a minute, if we're sending off someone in a good state of mind, isn't that the whole point here? And that's what I remembered was all that it matters, is that the feeling that we give people, no matter where they're going, no matter what happens, is the most important thing.
Wow.
Before Clyde T, she wrote this was in the beginnings, it's the AHNA Beginnings magazine, you guys, for you health, Clyde T, or I'm sorry, Linda and Teresa, I'm sorry, and Lynn. And so Clyde T was writing about how Drema had passed. And I remember when Drema passed, we had an incredible kind of a memorial. And there were a lot of people who wrote in letters, and I wished I still had some of those. I don't know who has those, but it was a beautiful, beautiful thing to be able to hear and share what everyone had seen working with Drema, because she was a bundle of energy and a beautiful soul. When Clyde T wrote this article, she said, her dear friend Drema died of breast cancer at age 54. She had the good fortune of having shared much of her personal journey with this remarkable woman. And she says, the last conversation we had occurred during the final month of her life. To my surprise at the time, we did not talk about her condition. Instead, she shared with me her excitement about an audio tape she was recording as a gift to others in the nursing profession. In this recording, Drema expressed her philosophy of a life philosophy profoundly influenced by a simple spiritual principle-based understanding of how human beings function. The understanding has also been deeply meaningful in my life and has been the foundation of my own work for many years. In telling her story on tape, Drema explained how this understanding had helped and guided her. And as you know, it's first as a nurse working with patients, second as a caregiver, and last as a patient during her own illness. To me and many others, Drema embodied holistic nursing, not as a specialty or a set of techniques, but as a feeling that permeated her work. She called it the aloha feeling. And when she died, a nursing friend captured that feeling with the following tribute. We worked in intensive care together. There was no greater fun than working along with Drema. The joy she shared lifted spirits and promoted healing. She was the epitome of a nurse, confident, patient, warm. Her presence was her greatest gift, and she used it well. And that was written by me all that time ago. And honestly, when you're working in a field where backstabbing and griping and complaining is what's happening, and then you see, like when Sue Bodum saw that change, she came back, we were laughing, we were singing, we were a team. We used to hide out in the little back room. We used to actually smoke behind a closed glass door, and the ICU was just on the other side of it. And we'd sit there having our coffee and smoking and looking at everybody and hearing the bells ring. And it was not something that we were into responding to as quickly because we're on break, because we were all so stressed out. Picture later, there's hardly anybody ever sitting back in that room, because every time a bell rang, almost all of us would jump up at the same time. We all made light of the work because we were a team. So it was phenomenal. And in Rick and Roger's first book, Sanity, Insanity, and Common Sense, they spoke about what was happening on the unit too. And it all comes down, as we hear Drema saying it, and as they did in the book, it comes down to the connected. That's what Sue said. She goes, they were so connected with the patients. And if we don't have the connection, and that's what Teresa and Lynn were talking about on their, webinar recently too. We have to get down to this place where we're actually there with someone. The presence is the key, It's so anyway, I got all teared up too, Bill, because hearing her voice and thinking about all of the love we shared, and I'm so grateful. And I hope all of this gets out to help some nurses. And thank you, Lynn and Deborah, for 3,000 nurses out there already. A tipping point. Oh my God, you guys. So your turn, Sue.
Jim, first of all, I just want to say that Karen, that was, that's really beautiful. I would love to have, because I don't want to miss Sue talking, I'd love to have a 3-minute old man break.
All right, Bill.
We can call it an A break, a B break, or a P break. Whatever you choose which one, and I'll be back in 3 minutes.
Okay, try for 2.5.
Okay.
Karen, that was just beautiful. There's so much happening in this room right now, just with those first 2 talks. My thoughts go to, I've got to watch this tape over and over and over again. That was a wonderful share that you just delivered to everybody in the room. Sue's memorial, I was fortunate enough to be there, as well. Yeah, just, it's incredible what's being shared today, far beyond my wildest dreams. Already, with only the 2 of you having talked. I can't wait for Susie's talk either, and Rita's, and others that I've got here, Christine. I'm not sure if Judy Sedgman is here. She was going to try to make it. Susie, if you would unmute yourself, we'd love to hear what you have to share with us.
Do you hear her now?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
We hear you.
thanks, Gordon.
Wow, that's a hard act to follow, you guys. And I don't even know where to begin. Sue Odom was my best friend.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
I met Sue Odom right before I actually joined the intensive care unit. I was a nurse on the unit right outside of the intensive care unit, where the guys that would be discharged would come to my floor. And I always remember Sue and Karen. They would bring them out and pushing the bed down the hallway. And I always thought, hey, those two are so cool. I wish I could be their friend. And I remember one day Sue Odom came out and she was telling me Karen Miller was going to have a party. And I went, do you think I could come? Because I was new to Florida. And Sue Odom goes, sure, she won't mind. And then later on in years, Karen always said, oh, you invited yourself to my party just so you could meet the doctors. Well, then I got, within a few months, invited to join and be a part of the intensive care unit. And so that's where my whole life changed. I loved working the intensive care unit. And like Karen said, we were so stressed out and didn't realize it. And you'd say, I'm not stressed out. And I know every time I say that, I definitely am stressed out. And so they actually did a test, had us fill out all this paperwork if we were stressed out. So we filled out all the paperwork and we said, here, we're totally stressed out. And they said, well, then we'll have somebody come in. No, okay, thank you for the, filling out the paper. And we said, no, we want something done about that. We're stressed out. We want help. And that's when they had Rick Suarez come down, like Karen said, and taught communication classes. So we'd all sit in the back room and like Karen would say, we'd go, no, I don't want to go, you go. But I actually really liked going. And so I'd go, there would be 4 or 5 of us back in there, Karen, Sue, Darlene Needleman. And we'd come out of there and I'd say, do you know what he said? I go, no, me neither, but I feel good. I don't have a clue what he's saying. So then it got to be fun because we really liked going because we didn't know what he was saying, but boy, we were feeling good. And that's sort of how it happened. We didn't even know how to even explain it, except I knew how I searched all my life for happiness. And all of a sudden, I realized it was within me. So my particular point was that, yes, Karen's absolutely positive. We became so happy. Our book was, we go in at nighttime and we'd play Staying Alive, Staying Alive, Staying Alive. That was our theme song. And our book was Don't Die on My Shift. And those are funny things that we became laughing about. And we'd come into work at midnight, where you're dying, and we'd go, all right, let's get going. We'd help each other out. We'd do stuff. I mean, it was amazing. We would volunteer all the time to do extra shifts so we could work together and do things. Personally, for me, what I saw was I started treating everybody like it was my dad. That if my dad was laying in this bed, this is what I would want to do for him.
Wow.
And that's what really changed my love and intensity and presence of working as a nurse, is just loving everybody as my dad. And experiencing sitting with someone when they die I'd never experienced that before. And what an honor, what a true honor. And we started working so differently with the doctors. You know, initially they would scream and yell and we'd scream and yell back at them, you know, and who do they think they are and all that. And all that started changing. It was like we didn't react to their screaming or yelling. I remember the doctors slept in the next room outside of the intensive care unit, and you'd have to go wake them up when you needed new orders or something was happening. And they would always scream and yell. And then we'd get upset that they're screaming, hey, I'm just waking you up. You need to get in here. And then what we noticed changed was they're tired. They're exhausted. Sorry to wake you. You know, I can do it. Just tell me. It was a whole different change in dealing with people, reacting to people, seeing them as human beings. And Sue and Karen, I say that because we were a threesome, really. And we had so much fun, but I saw just in working with patients, what a difference. I saw Sue Odom as a little fairy flutzing around, like Bill said, with her smile and that laugh. And I always called her that she had happiness dust that she sprinkled all around as she went around. But it's just that the patients changed, everything changed, the unit. I remember certain nurses were just so negative and awful, and nobody wanted to work with them. And I remember one particular lady, Karen would remember, you couldn't do anything right or do anything. She was just so hard to deal with. And I decided I was going to work on her. I was going to love her to pieces. No matter what she said to me, I was going to smile. I was going to do what I could do. You'd go to help. I don't want any help. Oh, that's okay. I'll still help you. And then I would go do the work. Well, I swear in about a month, she became one of my best friends. And she said to me one day, why are you so nice to me? I said, because I like you. We're just working together. And to me, it was like a goal, like, oh my God, people can change. But I know this is about Drema and everything of the process. But Drema also worked, I wanted to talk about the research. She worked with these unbelievable people, men, who had cancer of the esophagus, the throat, the mouth, the nose. They were totally disformed. I mean, some of them you couldn't even recognize. Had feeding tubes, you know, mucus coming out all over the place. And Drema would go in every day and sit on their bedside and talk to them. I went with her one day and I couldn't even stay in the room because of what you would see. But she just take her little self and her good little spirit and laugh and tell stories. That was her. She was so full of love, and everybody knows that. Everybody that's on this call that knew her, she was full of love. And everybody that's on here is full of love. All of you, and I thank you. I know the other little thing, as Karen mentioned, Sid always called us the crazy nurses because we were the first group of people to really sort of get involved. And he always said, I can't believe it's nurses. These nurses are the crazy nurses. And then when we went to Hawaii, we were known as the Sunshine Girls. So it's like wherever we went, I guess we took that little love and feeling and our good little smiles and our happiness to share with people. I thank you all. And I love Sue Odom, and I love you all.
Thanks so much, Susie. That was just wonderful. Yeah, thanks so much. I'd like to call on Rita Shuford next. Rita.
Well, anyone that met Drema, good fortune. That's the way I felt. You know, the thing is, like, there's some people that walk into a room and they light up the room. That was Drema. And I knew her first as Sue because I met her in Florida too. But when she went back to her first name, when she moved to Hawaii, I thought, in a way, that's really, really fitting, that name. There's something about it that captures her. And yeah, Drema helped me in so many ways as I was coming into my own understanding. And I've always, I guess there's something, I've always been drawn to the healthcare profession. And in Florida, you know, I spent about, I guess it was about 7 years working in a ventilator dependent hospital, which was the most amazing experience. And Drema really helped me during that time, because when I first went into the hospital, I could see, you know, where different nurses or doctors were in their own state of mind and how it might be impacting a patient, and the things that were being said about the patient, right? Like they're passive aggressive, or there are all these, you know, different, you know, patients that were struggling with their ability to get off of a ventilator or not. Some would never, right? And so I would talk to Drema a bit about that. And I said, well, they're not, what I would see with these innocent patients, just so, you know, doing their best, you might say. And I said, well, this, you know, the doctors talk about them, or the nurses or whoever, you know, talk about them as passive aggressive, you know, that they're not following the protocols, or, and she said, oh, they're just insecure. And I thought, well, of course, that's all it is. The patient, like any of us, when we can't show up in our best way, we're just insecure, right? And that really helped, because I saw it time and time again. I saw nurses, aides being insecure with a patient. And so it was like, you know, I always saw my job, and I saw that with nurses there in that hospital. One nurse in particular, she would walk into a room and the room would light up, right? She would talk to the patient eye to eye, soul to soul, right? And I saw the difference that made. And that's what I saw with Drema. You know, she was so joyful, so certain that anyone could be happy no matter what, right? And she brought that with her no matter where. I mean, I think of times sitting in my living room with her visiting, and we'd get to laughing about something. One time we got to laughing so hard about whatever it was, I don't even remember now, that I had to loan her a pair of slacks to go home, right? I mean, we just got to laughing so hard. And so I when I think of Drema, I think of that, but I also think of this incredible depth and insight that she had. And in such gentle ways, like once in a while I'd be, I don't know, talking about whatever my personal struggle was, and in such a gentle way, with her wise way, she would say, sometimes we just need a fresh start, or whatever would occur to her at the time, right? And I go, oh, yeah, that's right. Reset, reset. And so, I just, I watched her. I like that, Susie, what you said about the fairy dust, sprinkle fairy dust around. Right. And I watched her with J.A., her son, who, like Karen was saying, was going through teenage discoveries, and just her love, her wisdom as a parent, right? Her unflappable way of going about things. Yeah. And I remember at her memorial, which was such a beautiful, beautiful event, that one of I believe it was a nurse or a caregiver that was with her, standing around her bedside as she was coming to the end. And I guess she kind of woke up and saw that this person was crying, right? And I remember him saying, so she looks at me and she says, why are you crying? I'm dying. I'm not crying. I'm not crying. She just had such peace. And I've seen that. I recently had the privilege of working with an ALS patient for a few months before she was able to make her own choice to take her, to end her life. And I mean, there's a certain, I do have a certain calling for that. And I saw that with Drema, certainly, and Sue and Karen and so many nurses here, Deborah and Lynn, and it's a calling, right? And but the comfort in being with someone when they're transitioning from this world to the next is such a privilege, such a privilege. And Drema was one of those special people that way, that she could know that leaving this earth is not to be feared, not to be feared, and but to embrace. So yeah, a lot of my memories with Drema is just living life alongside her in many ways. I remember one other quick story. She decided she was going to sell her, I think it was a townhouse at the time. And she got it all fixed up, took care of everything. And then she put it on the market thinking it might take a while to sell. And then the first day somebody put a bid on it that sold, right? And there was something about that. I wish I could remember how she said it. Was like everything was in perfect motion. I'm not going to say it well, but it was like she got everything in exactly like she would want it. Someone else walked in and saw that, the feeling of it, the beauty of it, and they took it from there. And there was something about that always stayed with me. I'm not expressing it well here, but that she just had a way about her to make lemon out of lemonade, lemonade out of lemons, right? No matter what. So yeah, she's was always a special person in my life, and it's, like I said, especially I think in my work in the hospital, she was a wise consultant and mentor.
Thanks so
Plus,
much.
she's fun to be around. I always like to work with people who are fun, right? and she was fun.
Thanks so much, Rita. Christine Heath, how would you like to share?
Aloha.
Hi.
It's a little early in the morning for me here. I'm not at my normal computer. But gosh, was so touched when I got to hear Sue talk again. Sorry, I always cry. But the thing that I remember about Sue was that she and Karen Miller and Sue Sikora were really my first teachers. We were all part of this very early group. The classes, I think I was in the second class. I think they were in the first class at the Advanced Human Studies Institute. And I would fly down from Minnesota and spend a week or 2 weeks hanging out in Coral Gables. And mostly I hung out with the nurses, and Betsy was there too. And we would just have the most fun. And I had been the most serious human being in the world before this. So these women it felt like I walked down the sidewalk with them. I remember it was Sue Odom and Sue Sikora one day. And we were walking down the sidewalk in Coral Gables. And I thought, these two women are like levitating as we're walking down the sidewalk. It just felt like they had wings and they were flying, and I was still tromping along, walking heavily, and they were like these angels that I was walking with. And I thought, man, they would talk about this feeling, and I thought, what the heck are they talking about? Because I'd had this huge change. I mean, I'd really shifted dramatically, and yet I could tell when they were talking about this feeling that they were A, living in it, and B, it was something deeper than I understood. And it was like intoxicating. The feeling felt like it was intoxicating. And as I would hang out with them, I'd be like, oh, this happened and that happened. And they go, especially, that's the thing about Sue Odom. She had the best giggle, she had the best giggle of any human being in the world. And she was very lighthearted. And then the next minute, she would be so compassionate that she'd touch your soul. And then other times she'd be laughing, and then all of a sudden she'd come out with a one-liner that would just wake you up. It'd be like, wow, what was that? And that, to me, what I remember about her was that her Rita just was talking about it. There was a certainty with her that made her fearless. Like she just would do anything, like this would happen and she'd say, oh, Jay, blah, 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 and then she'd be like making a joke out of it. And she just would not take life seriously. Even at the end, I remember Sue Sikora and I went over to visit her. Remember that we went to, I forget her husband's name. I know it. Anyway, we went over to spend some time with her. And her mother-in-law had just passed away from cancer, and she had been taking care of her mother-in-law. And then she got her own diagnosis, and she was like, well, this is just the pits, I tell you. But she wasn't like depressed about it. She made the most of everything, no matter what, and she stayed hopeless. It was undaunting hopefulness that she had. It was just undaunting, and that the power of the feeling. Sorry, I get that feeling. It comes through me. The power of that feeling, as it came through her, was supernatural. It seemed beyond most people. Like she dripped of a good feeling. That's the way I always stood feel. It's like she was dripping from love and compassion and caring for people. Like never did I hear her ever be selfish or complain about herself, ever. She was just the most selfless person as well. But really, she indulged in life. She just indulged in the beauty of life. And if any of you get to ever listen to that tape that she made, that's exactly how she talked. Just exactly. You could just feel the way that she articulated words was from this beautiful feeling. She was a great gift to us. And, don't make it be about her. Like, that's the deal. It's like, it's in all of us. It's in all of us. It's just that she had such a big window that opened for her, that she shows the way. And that's what you want to do in your life, is just show the way.
I hate to be the one that breaks it. In many ways, I feel like it's a natural conclusion. It can be that through editing. There are others in the room that perhaps want to speak. One person that I had invited, I don't know if she's here, is Judy Sedgman. Is Judy here? Is there, Bill, you had more to say.
Well, only if, I don't want to take away from anybody. I got my chance, but I do have at least one story that I'd love to tell. But how much how much time did we have allotted here?
Well,
90 minutes?
we can take, Curran and I had thought about 90 minutes. That means we got about 15 minutes left. On the other hand, there's so much power in the room. I would leave it that, it could be edited at any time now, and still yet we could continue recording because there's an opportunity for more sharing. It's really up to the individuals. I would love to, I had in my mind, this is just a plan. The reality is that it's been an incredible sharing thing, and it just took a wonderful natural ending, but we can still share if we want. Is it greedy? There may be people in the room who have been waiting for an opportunity to share. Another thing, Bill, another turn I had thought we would take is kind of move into the present, and people like Lynn McCrighton and Teresa and Maya and others that would speak, did not know Drema but could speak to the new things. So it's just a plan. I'd love to hear from you again, Bill. If Judy was in the room, I'd love to hear from her. And there are other people. I saw Kathy Marshall. I don't really know Kathy, but I know of her. And if she wanted to share, or anybody else that wants to share, we can record that. But I'd love, you did mention that you had some stories, Bill, and we came to hear you too. So.
Well, I can share the one story that comes to mind, if you want, and I'll, I have a plaque that I picked up where my father grew up in Northwest Iowa, where an Irish settlement, and it says, "You can tell you're Irish if you have absolutely no idea to make a long story short." But I will do my very best to make it really short within a few minutes. But I remember a number of just quick things that Sue told me that one time she was going, and this may be one of the other nurses here that my memory may be false, but she was going over to the University of Miami to talk to the nurses, and she was anxious. She'd gotten herself anxious, and she said to Rick Suarez, Dr. Suarez, she said, "Would you hypnotize me?" Now you got to understand, this is early on. "Would you hypnotize me so that I am not anxious when I go to speak to them about the three principles," right? And Dr. Suarez looked at her and said, "Sue, you already are. Wake up. Like, you've hypnotized yourself into anxiety." Anyway, that was one of them. The other one was that she said that the first time she went to that she went to the group that they spoke about, Karen and Sue, that she was so angry when after it, now unless I'm remembering this incorrectly, there was one of you, that she found in the phone book, she found Rick Suarez's home phone, and she called him up and she just went off. How ridiculous what you're talking about, that it's not our job, it's our thinking. Are you kidding me? And she went on to Rick's, she said Rick just listened, and she finally stopped after I don't know how many minutes, and after a few aftershocks. And Dr. Suarez, Rick said, "Sue, I know that what you just said is true for you, but I know it's not the way you want to live." I know you love being a nurse, and I know that you don't want to have it be this way. And I'm just going to ask that you're willing to listen and check in with me in about 4 weeks. And of course, then she was walking with air under her feet by that time. So instead of dragging herself home, totally burnt out and exhausted by, quote, the job she
Sure.
was doing. But I'll tell now, but so I've told 3 stories already. So I'll tell the story that I was going to tell. And this may sound a little bit self-serving, but it also, I was learning at the same time. Sue and I were, this is 1985, 86. And each one of the nurses, Clytie, Sue, and then Hazel Foss was not a nurse, but they were the 3 therapists that were working with me. And one time on the way, taking a patient back to my office, I had to walk past all 3 of those offices. And it so happened that as we walked back, there was raucous laughter coming out of all 3 of these offices at once as we walked back. So we got back to my office, and this patient looked at me, who was there for her initial event, said, "What the hell's what's going on in those rooms?" And I said, "Well, therapy." She said, "I've been in therapy for 14 years and I've never laughed once." I said, "Well, let's talk. Let me listen. Let's talk." So on one Sunday night, I was, I didn't fully appreciate Sue, and I'm not going to get, I wished I wouldn't have been going so fast and furious myself at the time. I was learning. I try to be compassionate with myself as I look back in those days from 85 to 90. But I was so busy that I got 28 charts that I had not dictated. And so I went in, I told my late wife, Sue, I said, "I have to go, honey, I have to go in. It's a Sunday night. I would love to have spent time with my 2 little kids and her, but I said, I've got to go in and get those dictations done." So I went in and I spent just short of 3 hours dictating those 28 charts that I had my notes, but I had not dictated as part of if it's not in medicine, as people know, if it's not on it didn't happen, right? And so I dictated. So the next morning, it was Sue's week to follow me at the hospital and facilitate consults and just help me do because the demand was so huge because we were getting positive results. And so while I was talking to a doctor about a new consult, my beeper went off, and Sue realized I was in the midst of listening to this doctor about the patient he wanted me to see. And she said, "Dr. Pettit, would you like me to take that page and see what it is?" And I said, I'd appreciate that, Sue. So I gave her my pager, and it had the little number on it, very unsophisticated now, 40 years later or 35 years later. And so she came back, and I had finished with the doctor just as she was coming. And this is Sue's wisdom. And, she says, "How are you doing today, Dr. Pettit?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing good." So it was a Monday morning. She said, because it was the morning after I'd been, and I said, "I'm doing well." She said, "Well, like, would it take quite a bit for you not to be doing well?" Now that's kind of an interesting question. So I'm starting to, I said, "Well, yeah, it would, Sue. Did you have something in mind?" She said, "Well, just a hypothetical thing that I thought I'd run by you. If I said hypothetical. She's putting me down easy, right? I'm starting to know this is not hypothetical. I said, "Well, yeah, why don't you tell me this hypothetical thing, Sue, and then maybe I could tell you whether it would affect my well-being." She said, "Well, my understanding is that you went in last night and you dictated 28 charts, and I suspect it must have taken you 2.5 to 3 hours." I said, "Well, that's right." She said, "Well, so let's say hypothetically we'll call her Elaine, who was in the office, that she and her husband had just moved down from Iowa, and she was fairly new. And let's say that hypothetically that Elaine accidentally erased your 3 hours of dictation. I said, hypothetically, right? I said, this is not hypothetical, is it, Sue? And she got real quiet and she said, well, no, it's not. Okay. But her ease that, so she said later that I turned in about 45 seconds, I turned very different shades of red, right? But I knew enough not to say anything or do anything, right? And she said, and then after about 45 seconds, I said, how is Elaine? And she said, terrible. She's sobbing uncontrollably. She's sure that you're going to fire her. And I said, and she's really pretty sure you're going to fire her. And I am so grateful that it didn't take 10 days for me to recover from, quote, that. Again, I'm just grateful. And so I took a handkerchief and I said, well, let's go in the room and I'm going to call the office. So does anybody on this line, there's a couple of people age-wise, does anybody know who Rosemary Woods was? President Nixon, I see Rita nodding her head. President Nixon, as much stuff as it was recorded, there was 18 minutes that were erased by his secretary, Rosemary Woods, right? That must have, God knows what was on those 18 minutes, given what we all heard back then. So I get on the phone with my handkerchief and I call my office and I say, I'd like to speak. It's Florida Psychiatric Institute, and I said, I'd like to talk to Rosemary Woods. And she said, well, there's no Rosemary Woods that works here. And I said, well, that's not what I heard. Oh, Dr. Bennett. I'm so sorry. I said, Rosemary. I said, Elaine, it's okay. Put the charts back in my office. And what I would ask you to do is to meet and see if we could make a plan so this never happens again. That's what I would ask. But you're fine and your job is fine. And I'm glad to have you working. And he who has not made a mistake, throw the first stone, right? Anyway. But I'm grateful for myself, but I was also grateful that Sue made it easier for me the way her compassion was with Elaine, but her compassion was also with me. Here, Dr. Pettit is trying to help these other people, and now I have to give him this news. It's not like your daughter just got killed in a motor vehicle accident, which kind of that's a challenge to our sense of the world, but 28 charts, 2.5 hours, give me a break, right? But there's a day in my life, not too much before I met Sid, that would have been the straw that broke the camel's back. Anyway, I share that as just a memory of Sue. I can see her saying, I have a hypothetical thing here, Dr. Pettit, to see if it might affect your well-being. I knew it wasn't hypothetical. Anyway, so I'll stop there.
I'd like to say one more thing if I can. I just want to say that not only did the nurses help everybody else, we all were very affected, but it helped everyone to become able to take care of themselves. Where we would be calling in and doing too many shifts, we started recognizing we can say no. I loved that Drema, and think of a nurse as every day you're sharing stuff that's helping somebody somewhere and you don't even know it. She had a sign on her door on Sundays that said, not open till like 11. And it was like all the kids in the neighborhood got to know that, nope, you don't go over and play with JA on that day. Sunday, they're not open till like noon, kind of thing. They knew. So I just see that probably every person who lived in that complex also started thinking, oh, look what she's doing. That's smart. Why don't we do that? Like we're all started learning how to take care of ourselves. And every day, like I went to physio one day after I had both of my knees done, and they're talking about, oh, it's Monday. I'm like, seriously? I said, you don't like Mondays? I said, does that mean you're going to take 52 days out of the year you've already said you don't like them? Like the fact that you're in the physio office just starts peeling in laughter, because it's like they recognize we're sharing little pieces of wisdom, just being who we are, doing what we're doing. So don't think it has to be that you're putting in how many hours on the nurse's floor, that it's everywhere that you go, that you're starting to have a feeling, this feeling that Sid talked about. People always are asking, what the heck is that about? Because it's not something you can describe. And I just remember that listening to Sid, I realized that the less I was listening in that sense of the words, I would sit there and I couldn't even believe. I'd start crying, or I'd be touched by something. And it had nothing to do with me saying we knew. Like Susie said, we went and we heard stuff and we had no idea what it was, but we all felt better. And so don't ever miss how powerful anybody who has any kind of understanding. You're amazing what you're sharing, family, friends, neighbors. It's like, seriously, it's out there. And when you think of a nurse, she touches a patient, she touches the doctor, she touches the other people she's working with, but that patient goes home or they get affected, their family. That's the thing that's been most beautiful about this, is seeing how it just is rippling, that it's contaminating everyone else with a good feeling too. So God bless all the nurses and healthcare people. And let's hope that we can see that people can get something to help, like that this gets out there. Like, I can't even believe we got 3,000 coaches out there already, you guys. So, and that's just who's gone through your program. The amount of people out there that are starting to change lives, it's amazing. So yeah, keep on keeping on.
Thanks, Karen. If there's anybody in the room who would like to share right now, please put up your hand, and we'd love to hear you. Alan Friedman is up.
I'm so moved. I am so moved by this past 90 minutes. Reflecting on my own journey as a healthcare provider has been beautiful, and to see any little place that I shifted for my patients or my coworkers before I understood the principles. But now I'm in a situation where a caregiver of my mother has lied, stolen holiday gifts from my mom and I to her caregivers, and has made a medication error for 30 days. And I said to her, something must really be, I said, what I know is only hurt people do things that they wouldn't do when they're not hurting. But I can't wait now to go be there for her in her hurt. I'm seeing how it was really noble of what I said to her, but to be there. From this feeling is the greatest gift I can give her and her coworkers who don't like her because she retaliates against them when she doesn't like them. And it's like transforming this one facility from the inside out. I am so grateful to all my teachers and all my friends. Bless you all.
Thanks, Ellen. And Ariel?
So today I realized I was going to be on this webinar and that there was a book to read called Drema's Story. And so I downloaded it on Audible and listened to it before I jumped in. And the thing that really struck me about Drema was how genuine she was in relating her story to everyone. Just the way that she spoke in such a gentle, loving way. And I saw that this is what I wanted to do. I've been doing mental health classes for seniors, turning 70 this month. And as I was listening to her, I said, oh my God, this is it. This is exactly what I want to be doing. And I'm not a nurse. I'm a massage therapist and a coach, but I thought this is the avenue is to be able to share this understanding with people that are in the situations that she was in. The nurses, the doctors, the paramedics, the police officers, the firefighters, just to reach out to people that are doing the work that they do and knowing that there is hope. The hope that we have to share with others is so incredibly important. And the feeling that we've all talked about today is really the end of that personal suffering that can happen in an instant. I've seen it happen in my mental health classes with one of the women that came in with her husband. She said the first time she came, she said, I'm here under duress. She was dragged in her wheelchair by her husband. And I said, well, you don't have to stay. Nobody gets to stay under duress. And she didn't leave. 4 classes later, she said that she realized it was her own negative thinking that was creating her experience. I jumped out of my chair and I went over and gave her a hug because she heard something. And I know that changed her life. And then she said that she realized that her mother had that same kind of thinking. Huge the impact that we could bring to another human being just by waking them up. So I thank Drema for sharing her story because it really, to me, was exactly what I'm here for. And I thank you, everyone in this group, for sharing your beautiful experiences, because it really does show the power within us. So thanks.
Thanks so much, Ariel. And now I would go to Teresa Walding.
Just wanted to express my gratitude for being part of this group today. For Lynn McCrite, who invited me to learn about the principles when I didn't have a clue what they were. A funny little story about that is we were driving back from a conference and she's like, I really want to share the principles with nurses. And I was like, I don't know what those are. And I said, well, how do you learn them? And she said, I can't teach them to you. You have to experience them. And of course, my little nurse brain went, I can learn anything, right? But she didn't elaborate and she didn't pressure, and I didn't say anything else. And 6 months later, I am in a conference and hear about these principles for the first time, and my whole entire life shifted. And I knew that this is what nursing had been looking for my whole career. I knew I wanted to find something that helped people, even when they didn't know what else to do. And the first one was me. And I thought, and so the desire and the, I don't know what you call it, like dream to be able to do this for not just for nursing, but for humanity has become a life mission. And I think it's much like everyone here, you see something like this and you can't keep it to yourself. Even if you're not formally teaching it to someone, it changes you. And that's what matters. Because you go with yourself everywhere you go. And it creates that ripple effect for every one of us. So I have been really touched by the stories today, and I'm really grateful to all of those people who have gone on before, who have shared their wisdom and their love and their support for all of us doing this work out here. So thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks so much, Teresa. And now over to Debbie Harbison.
This has just been so amazing. And I just want to say thank you right off. I'm so grateful to everyone in this space and people that I have learned from coming along. And I think one thing that it just came to as Teresa was speaking was as a nurse, as a human being, you have these glimpses of all of these times that we talk about bring these beautiful feelings. And you just think it's like, I'll just speak personally, it's a happenstance. Oh, that's just when I'm with this person or whatever. And then when you find out about this idea of the three principles, it's like, I could have this more often. I don't have to win the lottery, or I don't have to be around somebody, lottery being the people that you're around. And so it just has been so deep in how I have wanted to share this with other nurses as well as every human being. And one thing that has resonated with me as I've listened to the stories about Drema, and I really connected with when Christine said about not making this about Drema, but that we all have this potential. And the other piece of that I thought was like, not only the ripple of when we touch someone or we share, or we have this moment of kindness and love and we're just with people, but look at this, there's been a passing of her and these stories continue on. And she's not here in the physical sense, but we've all experienced this beautiful feeling in just hearing about it and how it touches other people. And so just to know that as human beings, wow, that you can just continue on. And, when you're with people in love and understanding that there's no end, it's infinity to when that may touch another person. And I don't know if any of this makes any sense, but I'm just so grateful to be here today. So thank you all for doing this. And Jim and Curran, your efforts to always bring this out and share Drema, I'm particularly grateful for. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Debbie. And now we have Dr. Josh Schwartzbaum. Welcome, Josh.
Hi, everyone. Hi, thank you. Thanks for putting this together. It's really been a great experience listening to all the stories and everything. And, I read the book over the weekend. I'm going to listen to it now, for sure on the audio tape as well. But, what Drema wrote or said it still rings true today. It's essentially timeless. I mean, I'm working in emergency rooms, heavy psychiatric populations. We're dealing with violence towards staff and towards patients, towards each other. It's whatever. And addiction clinics, and it's like, I see this stuff playing out. The same for the patients, the way she describes, the same for the nurses, for the doctors, for everyone who's involved in the healthcare delivery system. And you can see how on every level, if each side or each piece of this equation had this understanding, the results would be vastly different in terms of how we treat medically and treat each other personally as well. Testing, imaging that we order, the way that we approach disease in general in our country and in our world. And it's nice to it's nice to hear how people do it and how she did it. And I hope that this is a good springboard to get this message off the ground more into healthcare and into nursing, and I mean really every aspect of healthcare, and including the patients too, because if both sides have a better understanding, I think it's just better off for everyone. So thank you.
Thanks so much, Josh. And Lynn McCrae.
I am so privileged to have known Sue Odom, and I'm just so privileged to have met the same day Sydney Banks and Karen Miller Williams and Susie Sikora. I just am absolutely counting my blessings, and I wanted to say a couple of things. First of which is that when Clytie Mills wrote that beautiful article about Drema in the Beginnings magazine for the holistic nurses, she had already written one article before that, and that article was in regard to Sydney Banks' discovery of the principles. And how beautiful it is that there were actually only those two articles, and that's the perfect jumping off place again for us now. When Clytie and Roger talked about her publications, he really encouraged her not to just keep it within holistic nursing, because he did not want this, the principles to be siloed into alternative health. He wanted it to be mainstream. And that is always how I have seen my work. It can't be otherwise when we have such large goals. Teresa and I are looking at bringing, first of all, new life to ourselves and our professions. And through that, to bring resilience to all of humanity through nursing and healthcare. I just thank you, Jim, for putting this on for us today, and for everybody who's here with us and whose lives have touched mine, and all of the lives that all of us will touch in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. I think that's about it. So we're loaded up with joy and
Jim,
gratitude. Oh,
We've
sorry.
got Maya left.
Oh, we got Maya. Maya.
I'm really grateful for all that you do, Jim and Karen, and yeah, I really enjoyed all the stories here. They really touched me, and I didn't know about Drema until maybe 2 months ago. And it was really a blessing to get to know about her and to get introduced to her story and her way of sharing principles. And I'm so grateful that this story is getting out to the world now. So thank you for your work on this. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Maya.
I could say something. I'm still here. Eliza?
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. The stories were great. I worked not as a nurse, but I worked in the healthcare. I worked 20 years in nursing homes as a director of recreation. And I guess one of my pluses, I could have more, I could have less, is that I never judged people. And I really, really had love for my residents. And I felt for everybody incredibly. I always thought, what if I was in their position? You know, what happens if I had early Alzheimer's or couldn't walk or just couldn't so many things that sick people have. So I had my compassion. And even I have 3 adult sons. I would bring in their clothes and their shoes and whatever they didn't want. And I would give it to the residents. And I would tell people even like with stuffed animals, it sounds very babyish, but it's not. People like to mark they only have that one little bed in that room. So they could mark it with their little stuffed animal or their little sweet thing. And I'm not working now, but I really loved being kind to people. Yeah, thank you so much.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Great.
Lisa. Is that it now, or?
Jim,
Go ahead,
Jim,
Karen.
would you please take a few minutes and talk about the book, Drema's story?
It seems as though everyone in the room knows about Drema's story. I'm grateful for that. It's many people have been mentioning that they read it recently, or they're buying it, or they're going to get also listen to the audio, and that is one of the purposes. You might ulterior motive for having a webinar such as this. Yes, please read the book. The more that you do it, the more that you have a tool to share within the healthcare industry or within your daily lives. If you're not involved in the healthcare industry, I don't think you can go wrong by treating yourself to the truth that is shared by Drema Odom Blitz. So that about the book, and another promotion that we have in mind is starting next Sunday at the same time. Will be a series of 6 sessions, which go under the heading Drema's Book Club. And so during those 6 sessions, we will be going in depth. Now, I don't know how deep we can go, but we're going to go as deep as we can into this little book over a period of 6 sessions. There's a fee for this, very reasonable. It's $80 for the whole series. They will be an hour to an hour and a half long. And if you purchase it today, if you can go online, and have we got a link for it, Karen?
Yeah, Jim, it's on the chat.
There's a link in the chat. If this is of interest to you, then it's going to be limited to 20 people. There are a few people in there already, but please sign up. It will certainly benefit my sharing ability if I have people to share with in that situation, and get some practice. Perhaps we'll do more of it. Perhaps there will be courses developed around it for nurses or healthcare workers that could provide PD credits. These are potential things that could happen in the future. However it goes out, it's out. It's out now. Thanks so much to everybody that shared in this room. It has been a profound sharing. The video for this is going to be available to anyone who wants to tune in on this. People that read the book will be referred to it. I can't thank you enough, everyone. Just the experience of having you all together is almost overwhelming. And I'm happy that you've had the appreciation, particularly the ones that have been sharing. Bill Pettit, especially, but Susie Sikora, Karen Miller Williams, Christine Heath, Rita Schufert, the others later on that were there, Maya, Teresa Welding, Lynn McCright, Josh Schwartzbaum, Ellen Friedman, and Elysia, and a couple that I may have missed. But I appreciate you all sharing. We've got an incredible video here. You know, when I was promoting this, I said, you know, what better thing could we do to start the new year but to get together and share truth? And my goodness, I must be a prophet because it's far beyond anything that I could have predicted. So thanks so much. Curran, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, it's been wonderful working with you, Jim. It's a great story to see that the recording that Drema did 20 years ago, so that turned into a book. And today we all have this understanding, this message, the secret of happiness in life. So I recommend that everyone just go either read the book or just listen to it. Thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Dr. Bill.
I want to say a few more words about Curran. He's been a wonderful friend for me during the past year. This would not be here without Curran's efforts. He's fearless. He'd take on anything. He's great at advertising. He's not afraid to, you know, to put himself out there and learn with every attempt that he makes to share. So you know, Curran, thanks so much. I really appreciate you. You're a wonderful guy. And you know, that's where I can keep saying it. Thanks, Dr. Bill. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, all of you guys. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Jane. I see Jane. My goodness. Aloha.
Aloha.
Thanks, Jane. And I think it's time to stop the recording and go into the aloha.
You can unmute people and they could kind of say goodbye, I think.
Thanks so much. It was beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yes.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Aloha. Bye, everybody. Aloha. Good
Aloha.
to see you guys.
Hello.
Aloha.
Very much.
Bye.
Okay.